Republican, Independent, Liberal, or Conservative. We need to refocus ourselves to taking care of the needs of all the people. I'm sick of listening to people talk about solving poverty. I want to solve poverty. I want to create jobs. I want to build better neighborhoods, and with your help, we'll be able to do it. Tonight, I hope I have the opportunity to share some of ideas with you. And if not tonight, over the next month or two, I hope we have an opportunity to work together. We can build Syracuse back to what it used to be, but only if we put aside our differences, our ambitions, and we work together, and we recognize that unless all the people of this community have an opportunity to rise, none of us will rise. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. Ben?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Ben Walsh. I'm running for mayor as an independent candidate. A little bit of background. I grew up, born and raised here in Syracuse. Grew up in the Strathmore neighborhood. I now live not too far away, just above Western Lights, off of Bellevue and Glenwood. We are in my home TNT sector here. And I just have to say that as I look around the room, there wasn't long ago when the TNT Southside TNT sector, there wasn't a whole lot going on, and man, is there a lot going on now, so I'm really excited about that. I'm running for mayor because I grew up in a family of public servants where if we saw something that needed fixing, we fixed it. And I believe that I've developed a strong track record of doing just that. I've worked in the public sector, I've worked in the private sector, I've worked in the not-for-profit sector. Up until this time last year, I spent 6 years at City Hall in the Economic Development Department. I developed a reputation as someone that brings people together and gets things done. You can look at big projects like the Hotel Syracuse, a project that people never thought could get done. I worked with the developer, I worked with our public partners, our private partners. I brought them together every Monday morning for 2.5 years, and we got the project done. I spent time in neighborhoods hearing about problems with vacant properties. We identified a solution in the land bank. We brought that to Albany. We got legislation passed. We brought it back home. We worked with the county. We created a city-county land bank, and we're now proactively dealing with vacant properties. The city's doing a better job collecting taxes as a result of it. And again, that was as a result of bringing people together and getting things done. Now, on the neighborhood level, one issue that's come up time and time again is access to healthy and affordable food. And again, in my time at the city, I identified opportunities where we could, whether it was in Valley Plaza and when PNC moved out, we got Tops to come in up on the north side with Wegmans moving out and Tops again coming in. I heard what the problems were, I brought people together, and I got things done. I personally have a lot invested in this city. My wife and I have owned our home for 11 years. I have 2 beautiful daughters, 7 and 3. My 7-year-old is in 1st grade in the city school district. I could not have more invested in this city, and I truly believe the city's best days are ahead of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Juanita?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I like being last. Unlike many of my opponents, I did not want to be in politics. I had no desire to be in politics. I like to do the work. I've been behind the scenes. I'm a mom. I've raised 4 children. I live in Strathmore, and I'm a grandmother. But I've also been very involved in my community. I have been on numerous boards, working in the Latino community, the African American community, the business community. I co-founded the first minority chamber of commerce. But as time went by, I realized that we need someone who can be a mayor, not just for a few people, but for everyone. And so I got in the race. I got in the race because I want this city to thrive and be prosperous, not just for a few people, but for everyone. And I take it personal. I come from a very strong but poor Latino family. And my parents would have never imagined that their daughter would grow up to be an attorney for an admiral in the United States Navy, to be an attorney for a mayor of the city of Syracuse, to be an attorney for New York State. But that all happened because of community. You're looking at a beneficiary of Head Start, free school lunches. I ate that cheese, we all ate. And I'm a first-generation college student. So I get it. I get what people are going through. And I can be a mayor for everyone because of that. We have 7,500 single mothers raising kids under 18 years old in this city. I'm going to be a mayor for them. We have close to 16,000 seniors who are living in inadequate housing, no resources. I'm going to be a mayor for them. And we have 18,000 family units living below the poverty line. I'm going to be a mayor for them. And to demonstrate that I can do that, I am the only candidate that has already written a 100-day plan, hit the ground running, 70 initiatives, 9 categories. You can read it online. I'm ready to go. I hope I'll have your support.
Thank you, Juanita. Okay, well, let's get into it. I mean, I thank you all for your introductions. And for the first question, we've been talking about the issues in Syracuse for quite a long time, the same issues of poverty, the high poverty rate, the lack of jobs, the lack of opportunities, the abandoned houses. We all are aware as a community of the issues. We've been talking about them. They've been here. Our motto here on the South Side, and I'm sure with other of our neighborhood community members, is, what are our solutions? We would like for you to tell us a little bit about your plan with the economic development and the city being in a fiscal crisis. What's your plan? What does the future of Syracuse looks like under your tenure if you were to be elected mayor? And how are we looking financially, and what are the incentives of developing income revenue streams to get us out of it? So talk about the solutions and a plan. Let's start with Joe Nicoletti.
Thank you. Can I just sit here? Okay.
Project your voice, just so they can hear. Use the mic.
Sure. You asked an awful lot for a question.
Solutions.
Yes. But let me start off by saying that one of the things that my experience has taught me is that while we have a structure of city government, the way we're approaching solving these problems is not working. I am proposing an entire overhaul of City Hall and the way government is structured. The first thing is very quickly, because I know we're limited for time, is I intend on moving economic development back into the mayor's office so that the mayor, he or she, is going to be the person that is going to direct economic development. And no economic development deal will come across the desk unless it is coupled with community benefits that will benefit the people of our neighborhoods. The second thing that I've learned in my experience, having been the director of operations, is when we had the famous Labor Day storm. I think many of the people in this room remember it. We got together all the department heads. But what I found in operating and leading that initiative is that it didn't work. It was a bulky situation. So that while we're going to have various department heads, we're going to organize issues. And we're going to attack issues by integrating various departments and various agencies that are not necessarily part of city government, i.e. on poverty, crime, housing development. The final thing that we're going to do is we're going to attack with great preciseness such issues as what I think are very important, and that is the dilapidated states of our neighborhood. It is disgusting to me when I go through the neighborhoods and I see the absentee landlords and the violations that currently exist. That's why the council sponsored, and we all worked together, those of us who are on the council, to create a new bureau to be able to move some of the housing code violations through quickly. In addition to that, we are going to target the issue of poverty. And how we're going to do that is take an entirely different approach. The programs of the past do not work. We have to talk about how we are going to provide housing for families that are getting subsidies. We have to talk how we bring educational balance throughout the entire community. And finally, we have to attack the fact that the city workforce does not reflect the diversity of our city. And we have to address that, and I promise you we will address that within the first 30 days of our administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura?
Thank you. We spent $13 million last year on overtime for police. Our police force is understaffed by approximately 25%. Crime is out of control. A Syracuse City High School student asked me the other day, as mayor, what will you do to make my neighborhood safe? Can you get me a central bus pass so that I don't have to walk through my unsafe neighborhood to get to school? We need more police. We need community policing. We need police officers who will forge relationships with the residents of the city. We also have to take a really hard look at what's going on in the Syracuse City School District. Yes, the graduation rate inched up to just beyond the 60% point this past year, which is a reason to celebrate. We want to accomplish everything we can and celebrate all of those achievements. But that means 40% of our students are dropping out. We know the relationship among dropping out, incarceration, poverty, and crime. We need somebody who has leadership, who understands public education in City Hall, who will support and provide resources to the Syracuse City Schools and hold them accountable so that our students are college and career ready when they graduate with their cohort and have a plan for post-secondary life, not to go out. Some of our students do earn their high school diplomas, but have still fallen into a life of crime. We need plans for those students who graduate for a career and college readiness beyond high school. So my solutions are to focus very heavily on public education and make sure our neighborhoods are safe. Thank you.
Chris?
Can you repeat the question, because I wasn't sure, was it about education?
No. Since Syracuse is ranked last in economic development, what is your plan on pulling this out or creating additional sources of revenue for the city?
Yeah, we have a significant issue with our economy. Luckily for the last 10 years, I've been working exclusively with locally owned businesses. I started an organization called Syracuse First. It's a network of businesses here in central New York, locally owned, independently operated, 435 of them in the greater central New York area. And, one of the first things that needs to happen in order to get this, our economy running is a change in culture in City Hall. The number of stories that I've heard over the years and continue to hear about the culture of no that exists in City Hall currently, there are a lot of people with a lot of willingness and a lot of desire and some terrific ideas that exist in Syracuse. Many of them end up throwing their hands up in the air, giving up on those ideas and those dreams, and either giving up on them entirely or leaving the community and starting those businesses elsewhere. And I think those are, we can probably go through a long list of those things. So the first thing is creating a culture of customer service in City Hall and really changing the way that City Hall addresses economic development issues and entrepreneurship and investing back into the community. So locally owned businesses, for every dollar of revenue, they return $4 back to the local economy. So we had a campaign called the 10% Shift, and with a simple 10% shift in spending in Syracuse, we could create $130 million of new economic activity, create 1,300 new jobs, and have a $24 million tax impact. That's with a 10% shift. So think of what kind of impact we can have when City Hall, our municipal government, is thinking about what their role in economic development is. So a part of dealing with poverty is really understanding that the resources actually exist here in Syracuse. We have, if I could just finish real quick, we have institutions and municipalities that spend almost $2 billion a year. Most of it leaves our regional economy and certainly leaves our city economy. If we can be serious about getting them to localize their procurement process and invest into our communities, we're taking a huge chunk out of poverty and creating entrepreneurial opportunities. It's a proven model. Cleveland has done it, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and many other cities, and it's about time that we think about it as well.
Thanks, Chris. Juanita?
something. I'll try it without the mic. My plan is really threefold. And quite frankly, it's what other cities are doing. We're not reinventing the wheel here. But what we do know is that if the answer was that easy, it would have been done, we'd like to think. So I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I can tell you where we can start are where we have big game changers. We need to talk about jobs and workforce training, and we need to do that with initiatives that are coming our way. The fact that no one is talking about what I-81 is going to do for the city, to me, is just a huge loss. It's a game changer. And when we start talking about getting people ready for this project and leveraging $2 billion of federal funding coming our way, we can start to build really a platform that raises revenue in our city with regard to property taxes, with regard to tax revenue, and we're putting people to work. So the I-81 project and other initiatives where we can utilize those particular funding sources and put people back to work is a great way to raise revenue. Another way we can do this is through our neighborhoods. We all know our neighborhoods need work through infrastructure or dilapidated housing. That's how you raise revenue in a city. You raise your property values. But we look at blighted housing in neighborhoods where there is no plan, no vision, no strategy. That's how you raise revenue in a city. And last, what other cities are doing is they're making sure that those entities that are not paying taxes, like we know we have in this city, that they're paying fees, that they're responsible for the services that they receive from a city. That's all possible, and we can do that.
Okay. There was a recent controversy over the land bank funding slated for demolition. Sure, you want?
I wanted to speak
Okay,
to that
go
last
ahead.
question if I can. You asked about revenues. We don't have time to build up the tax base to raise the taxes to cover this structural deficit. We need tax reform. The state needs to pay for its mandates, and the commuters need to pay a portion for the services they use. That's short term. Now, revenues. How do we get revenues to poor people? We get them jobs, and the fastest way to do that is to make sure city-funded jobs with city departments and city contractors go to city residents, and particularly the people in the most disadvantaged communities. We've had an equal opportunity employment program on the books since 1973. The contractors put in a report on how many minorities they hire, and nobody's monitoring that. The Human Rights Commission used to report the numbers. Last time they reported was 2008, before they were abolished. They've since been reconstituted, but they don't report. Minorities are getting about a quarter of their proportional share of jobs on city contracts. Syracuse Industrial Development Agency, their local hiring requirements is a 9-county field. That don't help us down here on the south side. There's a lot of reforms. We've got to fairly enforce anti-discrimination and equal employment programs. And then, longer term, to build up the tax base, we can't give tax breaks to absentee owners in upscale housing projects like downtown, where the median income went from $20,000 in 2000 to $100,000 in 2010. And all the poor people got pushed down here. And we're concentrating the poverty down here, and we're concentrating the wealth down there. We got to have inclusionary zoning and housing projects. We've got to have worker co-ops where the work you create with your work, the wealth you create with your work, goes back to you as income and assets. Doesn't go out to absentee owners. And that way we can build community wealth. And I think we can do that in partnership with SU. In Cleveland, they have the Evergreen Co-ops, where they have University Circle, Case Western, Cleveland Clinic, and they help set up co-ops in the surrounding low-income African-American community, like an industrial laundry to provide the laundry for the hospitals and the university. We got coin laundry over here sitting idle. That's what we could do.
I really need to address that issue, and one of the things I want to talk about real quick is that everybody here has mentioned poverty, but when about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, myself and Mary Nelson brought Dr. Jaworski here to talk about poverty, and he wrote the book. It did the study that Syracuse was leading in poverty amongst African Americans and Hispanics, 5 amongst our white brothers and sisters. Nobody here, nobody who's running, and they were and connected in City Hall were there. Not one. But you want to speak about the issue of poverty, and you was in a position to help and bring things forward, but you did nothing. I want to thank Khalid and Joe with the land bank issue. I fought against the land bank when I first ran because I thought that that was a detriment to the city of Syracuse. It didn't move the Pentium dial forward. You were taking people's properties and not doing anything with it, or you was allowing certain people to buy the properties that was of value and leaving the other properties to blight. So when you look at the land bank signs on a lot of the houses on the south side, nothing has changed for those houses. They look the same. So kudos to you two for shutting that down and forcing the land bank to move in a direction that is going to deal with those issues in terms of those dilapidated houses that are currently existing, mostly on the south side and some on the west. But let's talk about economic development. I heard somebody mention Project 81 and said no one is talking about Project 81. I've been talking about Project 81, and it's actually not $2 billion. The real numbers, because I've been sitting down with DOT, is about $4 billion. It may be $5 billion. That's a huge game changer for people in our community. One of the things that I've been talking about with DOT on that issue is that we need to do some training to have people prepared so that they can be able to work in Project 81. Because that's what's not happened. One of the things that I said to members of DOT is that what I don't want you to do is bring the project in and then say, oh, we don't have no labor force people ready to come and work. And so now you're busting people in and you're totally negating the people who need the jobs the most. The last thing I want to say about economic development is, and I said this in my plan and you can read it online, when you go to my website. The critical thing about economic development, 97% of the workforce is done by small business. I specifically talk about supporting small businesses systemically from start to success. And in that success, whatever the city can, whatever I can do as mayor to put money back into your pocket, you put that money into your business and hire more people from the community. Then you begin to create a working force within the city of Syracuse that allows people to work. And what I will do is if you don't agree with those, or if you don't hire locally, then we'll claw back whatever incentives that we give you because we want to force you to make sure that we create economics for the people in the city of Syracuse. I'm going to say this last thing before I sit down. If you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got. And on the south, west, and north side, they've got nothing. We need leadership who's going to make it happen. Give me an opportunity, and then the very last thing is that when I'm elected, young people in our community can see that it is possible to get to the next level. So now they're thinking to themselves that I can be more than what they say I can be.
Great. Thank you, Alfonso. Ben, you want to tackle that? Because economic development is very important and everyone wants to get a
Thank you,
say in
Angela.
it.
And I'm going to stand because I'm going to own this. I was the city's economic development director for 6 years. And a lot of the things that we're talking about were things that I actually did. So when developers and property owners came to the city and asked for tax breaks, the first question was always,